The city was burning. From the shattered windows of the station lobby, Nora could see the fire crawling up the apartment buildings across the street like glowing vines. Ash floated through the air like snow. Distant screams echoed through the streets, muffled only by the crackling of flames and the rhythmic groan of the infected somewhere beyond the barricades. 10 minutes, said Reese, checking his watch. His voice was tight. He looked at Nora, then the others, 8 of them, a motley group of survivors who'd fought their way through the city just to make it here. 10 minutes until what? Asked Mara, the youngest, hugging her dog close. There's no one driving that train. You saw the track. Nothing's moving. There's a signal, Reese insisted, pointing toward the far end of the platform where a distant red light blinked in rhythmic pulses. Someone's still operating the rails. That train's coming. It's the last way out. A low snarl from behind the barricade made everyone freeze. A silhouette shifted just past the ticket booth, its limbs twitching with that familiar jerky motion that meant death was only seconds away if it saw them. Nora reached slowly for her bat, worn and dented but reliable. Reese motioned for silence. Everyone ducked lower behind the stack of chairs and overturned benches. The infected shuffled past, blind to their presence, for now. Nora glanced around the group. There was Eddie, the ex-con who'd carried Mara across 3 blocks of broken glass without a second thought. Sophia, a nurse with a homemade flamethrower and nerves of steel. Jensen, a silent man who'd lost his family and never spoke a word. 8 survivors. 1 platform. And a train that might never come. The power flickered again, once, twice, then dimmed for good. Darkness took the station. Flashlights, whispered Sophia, raising her arm and flicking on a beam. Low, and no shouting. They moved toward the platform edge, hugging the shadows. It had taken days to reach this point, dodging horde patrols, climbing fire escapes, crawling through sewers. It was all for this chance. One escape route. The tunnel ahead was black. Then came a sound, metal on metal, soft at first, then growing louder. A faint glow began to appear in the distance, headlights cutting through the dark. It's real, said Nora, breathless. Reese grinned. Told you. Then the ground trembled. But not from the train. Screeching erupted behind them, dozens of throats crying out at once. The infected had breached the outer station doors. A wave of them poured into the lobby, some crawling on all fours, others sprinting upright, their faces distorted by infection and rage. Go! Reese shouted. They ran. The train burst into the station, its brakes squealing, the doors already open. An old model, rusted in places, but intact. A driver sat in the control booth, a middle-aged man with a blank stare and a shotgun across his lap. He didn't wave. Just stared straight ahead, hands gripping the controls. Get in! Nora yelled, helping Mara up the step. Eddie was next, pulling Sophia behind him. Jensen hesitated, turning to swing his crowbar at a lunging infected. Blood sprayed. Another was on him instantly, teeth snapping at his neck. Nora grabbed his arm and yanked hard, Reese bashing the creature away just in time. They made it inside. The doors slammed shut. The train jerked forward, lurching into the tunnel. Behind them, the glass walls of the station exploded inward as the horde slammed against the building like a living tidal wave. But the train was gone, vanishing into the darkness beneath the city. For a moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the train on tracks echoed through the silence. Nora looked at the others, bloody, breathless, but alive. We made it, she whispered. The driver still hadn't turned around. Hey, Reese called to him. Where are we going? The man didn't reply. Mara stepped closer. Sir? The driver slowly turned his head. His eyes were bloodshot. His skin pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just a soft, guttural hiss. Sophia screamed. The man wasn't human anymore. He lunged. To be continued in part 2. The driver's chair clattered backward as he leapt, a blur of pale skin and twitching limbs. Reese reacted first, slamming the butt of his rifle into the man's jaw. The infected staggered but didn't fall. It screeched, clawing at Reese with inhuman speed. "Back!" Reese shouted, swinging again. "He's turned." Nora yanked Mara behind her, drawing her bat with practiced hands. Jensen lunged with his crowbar, driving the iron edge into the infected's shoulder. It shrieked, twisting unnaturally before falling to its knees. For a second, it just twitched. Then its head snapped up. Sophia didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and fired her homemade flamethrower. A jet of fire lit the cabin. The creature wailed as flames engulfed its upper body, then crumpled in the corner of the engine room, twitching violently. Smoke filled the compartment. Jensen kicked open the side door, and the flames hissed out into the cold air as the train roared through the underground tunnel. They stood in silence. The body crackled. The train kept going. Who the hell was driving the train? Eddie finally asked. Sophia coughed. Not someone with a pulse. Reese moved forward, gripping the dead infected's belt and pulling out a set of keys and a crumpled piece of paper. He read it, squinting. "What is it?" Nora asked. He handed it to her. On the paper, written in shaky handwriting, were 4 words. "Don't stop the train." Below it, coordinates. "What does it mean?" Mara asked. "I think it's autopilot," Reese muttered. "Someone rigged the throttle. This guy was probably just guarding it." Or, he turned, but the train kept moving anyway. "Then where's it going?" Eddie asked. Nora looked down at the note again. The coordinates were unfamiliar, but they weren't random. Someone had programmed a destination. "We follow it," she said. "We don't have a choice." The train thundered on, deeper into the darkness. They regrouped in the main passenger car, a rusted metal shell that once held commuters, now turned into a bunker on rails. Windows were blackened. The seats had been torn out and replaced with crates, scrap metal, and sleeping bags. Emergency lights blinked overhead, barely functional. "It's like someone lived here," Sophia said, opening a crate of canned food. "Or planned for this," Reese muttered. They moved carefully through each car. More signs of past occupants, maps, scribbled warnings, and a row of zip-tied weapons tucked into a wall rack. Shotguns. Knives. Flare guns. It wasn't just transportation. It was a lifeboat. Nora stood near the back window, watching the shadows flicker along the tunnel walls. She'd never liked underground. Felt too much like a trap. A metal coffin with wheels. "We can't trust this thing forever," she said quietly to Reese. "If it stops in the wrong place." "I know," he nodded. "We stay ready." Suddenly, the train jolted violently. Everyone fell. A screeching metallic grind echoed from the front. Lights flickered wildly. Mara screamed. "What was that?" Reese jumped to his feet and ran toward the front of the train. Nora followed, gripping her bat. They reached the engine room in seconds. The throttle was still locked forward, but a red light on the control panel blinked angrily. "Obstacle on the track," Reese said. "Something's ahead." They looked out the front window. A barricade of abandoned cars had been piled across the track, intentional, like someone was trying to stop the train. Too late to stop. The train slammed into the barricade. The front car lifted slightly, metal shrieking as it ground through the wreckage, but it didn't derail. The train shoved through the blockade, sparks flying. Steel crumpled. The lights went out entirely. When they flickered back on, the world had changed. The tunnel had opened up. The train emerged into an old underground station, forgotten by the world. Rotting advertisements lined the walls. Moss dripped from the ceiling. The tracks ahead vanished into mist. And standing on the platform. Figures. At least 10. Maybe more. Not zombies. Not quite. They didn't lurch. They didn't growl. They stood still, watching. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. The train began to slow. "No," Reese whispered. "No, no, no, don't stop." The throttle clanked uselessly as he pulled it. The train halted. The doors creaked open. Silence. Sophia raised her weapon. Everyone, behind cover. But the figures didn't move. Then one of them stepped forward. A woman, tall, gaunt, pale. She wore a coat stitched together from military uniforms, and her eyes weren't human. She smiled. "Welcome," she said softly. "To nowhere. To be continued in part 3. No one moved. The survivors stared across the platform, weapons half-raised, as the woman in the stitched coat stood beneath the flickering lights of the forgotten station. She looked human, but something was off. Her skin was too pale, her eyes too bright, and the people behind her didn't blink. Not once. "Who are you?" Nora asked, stepping cautiously onto the platform, bat in hand. The woman smiled again, her expression unsettlingly calm. "Call me Voss. I run what's left of this place. You've just arrived at the edge of the city. Beyond here, there is no system. No rail. No signal. Just the dark." Sophia stepped out next, her flamethrower pointed low. "Are you infected?" "Not in the way you're thinking," Voss said. "We're survivors. Like you. But different." Reese kept his gun trained on the group behind her. "You gonna tell us what kind of different?" "We adapted." Her voice was smooth, like cold water. "The virus changed us, but not completely. Some of us were immune, some weren't. But here, we learned how to live with it. Tame it. Use it." "That's not possible," Eddie muttered. "There's no cure." Voss tilted her head. "Cure? No. Evolution? Yes." A soft groan echoed from the far end of the platform. From the shadows, a half-infected man limped forward, still breathing, his eyes bloodshot but not vacant. His veins glowed faintly under the skin. He stopped at Voss's side and stood silently. "He volunteered," she said. "And he's still alive." Reese stepped forward, disbelief on his face. "You're saying people are choosing this?" "I'm saying we've found a way to coexist with the enemy. And we've kept this station secure. No full ferals here. No panic. No war." Jensen growled low in his throat. "You're not survivors. You're just waiting to turn." Voss didn't blink. "Maybe. But while the rest of the city burned, we survived. And now, so can you." She gestured toward the old tunnels behind her. "You can stay. Or keep moving. But beyond this platform, the dark gets worse." Reese turned to Nora, voice low. "This doesn't feel right." "It's not," she whispered. "They're not infected enough to lose their minds, but they're not us anymore either." Mara clung to her dog, wide-eyed. "Are we safe here?" "For now," Nora said. "But I don't trust them." Voss stepped closer, reading their unease. "You've seen what's out there. We're offering something different. Shelter. Food. Answers. Not chains." "Why us?" Sophia asked. "Why let us off the train?" Voss raised a hand toward the ceiling where cameras were half hidden in the rust. "We've been watching. The train isn't just a ride, it's a test. Those who survive the journey earn the invitation." Reese narrowed his eyes. "And those who don't?" Voss's smile thinned. "They join the dark." Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from the rear tunnel. A low, rumbling growl followed. Voss's people tensed. Some drew blades, others backed away into the shadows. "What was that?" Nora asked sharply. "Something that wasn't supposed to follow," Voss muttered. "You brought it with you." From the tunnel mouth, the darkness shifted, and something massive stepped into view. It wasn't a typical infected. It was taller than a man, twisted with exposed bone and muscle, glowing veins pulsing across its arms. Its face was split open in a permanent snarl, and its eyes were nothing but hollow black pits. It roared, the sound shaking the platform. One of Voss's people screamed. Another ran. Reese fired. The bullet hit the thing's shoulder, it barely flinched. "It's a brute!" Sophia shouted. "We've fought one before, it doesn't stop easy." "Into the tunnel!" Voss ordered her people. "Fall back." But the brute charged. It plowed into the group with terrifying speed, tossing two of Voss's people like ragdolls. Blood sprayed. One of them twitched on the ground, half crushed. The others scattered. "Move!" Reese barked. "Fall back to the train." Nora grabbed Mara and ran. Jensen covered their retreat, swinging his crowbar at anything that moved. The brute turned its hollow gaze toward them, then sprinted forward on all fours like some unholy beast. They barely made it onto the train as Reese slammed the emergency lock. The doors hissed closed just as the brute slammed into them, denting the metal inward with a deafening boom. Reese looked at Nora, out of breath. "You think Voss made that thing?" "I think she woke it up." The train screeched as it reversed away from the platform, re-entering the dark. The windows flickered with the strobe of emergency lights. The brute didn't follow. But neither did Voss. Sophia stared out the window. "Where the hell are we going now?" Nora looked ahead, eyes narrowing. "To finish the ride. Wherever it ends. To be continued in Part 4. The train rattled deeper into the dark, its wheels grinding against warped rails as sparks lit the tunnel walls like brief flashes of lightning. Inside, no one spoke for a long moment. Everyone was still catching their breath, shaken from the brutal encounter on the platform. Nora leaned against the wall, checking Mara for wounds. "You good, kid?" Mara nodded, clutching her dog tightly. "What was that thing?" Reese stood near the emergency panel, watching the monitor that showed the last glimpse of the station they'd just escaped. The brute stood motionless on the edge of the platform, watching them vanish into the shadows. "A brute class infected," he muttered. "Enhanced, mutated. They're not just turning anymore. They're changing." Sophia sat beside her flamethrower, jaw tight. "That woman, Voss, she knew about it. She didn't warn us. She wanted to see how we'd handle it," Reese said. "She was testing us. Again. Like we're lab rats," Jensen spat. "Screw her." Nora moved toward the front of the car. "We need to know where this train is heading. If someone rigged it to test survivors, there's more coming. Maybe worse." They checked the remaining cars, 6 total. 4 for passengers, 1 modified for storage, in the front engine room, where the main controls now blinked a slow, red warning, "Power reserves, low." "Great," Eddie said. "We're running out of juice." Reese scanned the panel. "Batteries won't last more than an hour unless we find a recharge point or daylight. And I doubt daylight's coming." "Then we better figure out what's waiting at the end of this ride," Sophia said. Suddenly, the train's brakes groaned. Everyone tensed. A slow deceleration began, the lights flickering as if something ahead had triggered a stop. "No commands were given," Reese said, checking the controls. "It's automatic." "Another station?" Nora guessed. The train slowed further. But there were no signs, no platforms, no people. Just a tunnel. And this one wasn't like the others. The walls were cracked with age, overtaken by thick moss and creeping vines. Rusted scaffolding hung from the ceiling, swinging loosely as the train passed. It looked like the tunnel had been forgotten for decades, until now. The train finally stopped with a lurch. The doors hissed open. No announcements. No light. Just damp, stale air and absolute silence. "I don't like this," Sophia whispered, peering out. "Why stop here?" Reese moved to the edge of the doorway, rifle raised. "Only one way to find out." They stepped out one by one, flashlights sweeping across the ancient concrete. Mold bloomed in every corner. The floor was cracked and uneven. A weathered sign barely clung to the wall. Echo Tunnel, line abandoned 1994. Jensen read it aloud. Echo Tunnel? Never heard of it. Reese's beam caught something ahead. What's that? They moved cautiously, boots crunching on gravel. A chain-link fence blocked the path forward, wrapped in barbed wire. Behind it, the tunnel continued, but the tracks vanished beneath a thick bed of earth and bones. Thousands of bones. Mara gagged. What is this place? Sophia pointed her light higher. Words had been spray-painted in red across the metal bars. Don't listen to them. Everyone froze. What does that mean? Eddie asked. Then came the sound. Faint, barely audible at first. Like whispers. Just a breeze, or a voice. Nora turned. Did someone say something? No, Reese replied. No one spoke. The whisper came again, clearer this time, soft and haunting, as if dozens of voices spoke at once. Go back. You're not ready. You're not real. Mara whimpered. It's in my head. I can hear it in my head. Me too, Jensen said, gripping his crowbar tight. The whispering grew louder, overlapping voices, some crying, some laughing, others screaming words they couldn't understand. Nora gritted her teeth, trying to block it out. It's some kind of psychological trap, she said. We need to get out of here, now. Reese turned back toward the train, only to see the doors closing. Run, he shouted. They sprinted. Jensen barely slid through as the doors slammed shut behind him. The train groaned and began moving again, this time faster, like something had triggered an emergency retreat. Everyone was panting. Mara cried silently in Nora's arms. Even Sophia looked shaken. What the hell was that? She asked. I think, Reese said grimly, that was the point of no return. They rode in silence for several minutes, the train now climbing slightly, tilting upward. A signal pinged on the control panel, faint, blinking green. Reese leaned forward. It's a beacon. GPS says there's an old emergency station up ahead, outside the city limits. Finally, Nora breathed. The train surged forward, pushing out of the tunnel's shadow. And then, light. A faint glow ahead. The tunnel ended in a massive steel door, half open, revealing something beyond it. They had no idea what waited for them on the other side. But the sign above the door read only one word. Sanctuary. The train screeched as it emerged from the tunnel into dim twilight. The air felt thinner, colder. What lay ahead wasn't the bright dawn of escape, it was a crumbling facility surrounded by barbed wire fences and watchtowers long since abandoned. But the word sanctuary still hung defiantly above the steel doors, like a promise made by someone long dead. The train coasted forward and came to a stop at the edge of a rusted platform. Doors slid open. Reese stepped out first, sweeping his rifle across the open courtyard. Clear, for now. Nora followed, eyes darting to the shattered windows, the half-buried security cameras, the dried bloodstains painted across the walls. Doesn't feel like a sanctuary. More like a trap, Sophia muttered, flamethrower in hand. Mara stepped carefully beside her dog, Leo, who growled lowly at the empty wind. Something's wrong here. The group moved in slowly, boots crunching on glass and gravel. The facility was massive, like an old military compound, yet strangely quiet. Not even birds chirped. Eddie ran his hand along a control panel beside the main gate. Power's still running. At least partially. Doors respond to touch. Reese nodded. Let's move through. Stick together. They entered the facility's main corridor, concrete walls lined with emergency lights, some still flickering faintly. Signs marked areas like medical, living quarters, and command center. The deeper they walked, the more signs of previous inhabitants emerged, overturned tables, dried food trays, and bullet holes. But no bodies. Where did everyone go? Mara asked. They didn't leave, Jensen said grimly, gesturing to a dark smear on the floor. They got taken. Sophia led them toward the command center, where a large steel door hung ajar. They pried it open and found a room full of dusty monitors, old radio equipment, and one still-functioning mainframe. The screen blinked with a prompt. Last entry log, 97 days ago. Reese tapped the console. The logs loaded. A video feed began. A bearded man in a worn uniform stared into the camera, eyes bloodshot. Behind him, gunfire echoed. This is Commander Ellis of Sanctuary Post 9. If you're seeing this, you're too late. We made the mistake of trusting the wrong evac orders. They herded us here, like cattle. There were never any reinforcements coming. Only more infected. He glanced over his shoulder. They send them here. They breed them here. Brutes, shriekers, things worse than nightmares. We're the test subjects. He leaned closer. If you're smart, you'll leave before nightfall. Because when it gets dark. A shrill, inhuman screech rang out in the background. Ellis flinched, turned, and the screen went black. Test site, Nora whispered. Just like the brood at the platform. They've been using survivors as bait, and breeding new types of infected. Reese stood up. We have to keep moving. If this place goes hot at night, we won't make it out. Eddie pointed to a blinking light on the map. There's a freight tunnel out the back. Might still connect to the rail line. Could be our way through. They moved fast, crossing through the compound's decayed hallways, ducking under collapsed beams and stepping over silent alarms. The freight tunnel entrance was guarded by a massive rolling gate, but the power panel beside it was still green. Reese scanned his keycard. The gate groaned, shaking dust loose. But then, came the sound. From above. From everywhere. Low, guttural moans, slow at first. Then faster. Then screams. Echoing down the walls. They're coming! Jensen shouted. Mara turned and screamed as the first infected poured from the upper vents, thin, twitching figures with elongated limbs and glowing red eyes. Run! Sophia shouted, turning and unleashing a burst of fire up the stairwell. The smell of burning flesh filled the corridor, but more came behind them, crawling on walls and ceilings. The group sprinted for the freight gate. Eddie and Reese shoved the mechanism into full override as Nora and Jensen held off the horde with bullets and blades. The gate finally screeched open. They bolted through. But one of the infected was faster. It lunged, grabbing Mara's arm. Leo leapt and sank his teeth into the creature's neck, tearing it off her. Sophia pulled Mara inside. We've got her, go! Inside the freight tunnel, they slammed the emergency gate down. Reese smashed the control box, cutting the circuit. A loud metallic bang echoed behind them as the infected pounded against the sealed door. Silence. For now. Everyone was panting, bloodied, sweating. Nora knelt by Mara, checking her arm. Just a scratch. You're okay. Reese looked ahead. The freight tunnel stretched into darkness, with old rails buried in debris. He turned to the group. No more lies. No more false promises. The only way out now is through whatever hell this tunnel leads to. Behind them, they heard one final sound from the facility. The loudspeaker crackled to life. Test Group C, escape attempt detected. Sending retrieval units. The freight tunnel yawned before them like the throat of a beast, dark, wide, and swallowing every sound they made. Only their footsteps echoed along the old rail line, partially buried beneath dust, bone fragments, and old equipment carts. Reese led the way, flashlight cutting through the dark. Behind him, Nora walked with her pistol raised, checking corners with every step. Sophia held the flamethrower tighter than before, her eyes scanning the ceiling as if expecting something to drop. Jensen, Eddie, Mara, and Leo followed in a tight cluster, nerves stretched thin. Retrieval units, Eddie whispered. That's what they called them. What kind of place was that compound? Not a sanctuary, Jensen answered. A slaughterhouse. We were cattle. Mara clutched her injured arm, eyes hollow. Then this tunnel, where does it really lead? Maybe nowhere, Reese said grimly. But it's the only direction we've got left. They continued deeper into the earth. The tunnel widened ahead. Cracked signs hung from the ceiling, Loading Bay 3, medical disposal, restricted biohazard access. Large crates lined the walls, many with claw marks. A few were broken open. Something had escaped. Nora paused, shining her light on a large smear across the wall. A handprint, too large to be human. We're not alone. Leo growled softly, fur bristling. Suddenly, a loud metallic bang echoed behind them. Everyone froze. Then, another. Bang. 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 They've found the gate, Eddie whispered. And they're trying to break through. Reese turned. Move faster. If they get in here before we're out. A screech pierced the tunnel, a sharp, bone-chilling shriek that echoed in every direction. Sophia spun around. They're in the vents again. As if summoned by her words, a creature dropped from a ceiling panel ahead. It landed with a sickening thud, a deformed hybrid, part brute, part screamer. Its head split into 3 jaws, all dripping black saliva. It screamed. Leo barked, launching at it, but Reese held him back. No! That's not a fight we can win head-on. Sophia stepped forward, pulling the flamethrower's trigger. A cone of fire erupted, forcing the creature back. It shrieked and flailed, retreating into the shadows. Then dozens of clattering noises followed, vent covers falling, air ducts twisting. They're coming from every side, Jensen said. We need to run, now. They bolted through the tunnel, ducking under broken beams and sidestepping debris. Above them, movement flickered, clawed silhouettes crawling faster than human eyes could track. Suddenly, Mara stumbled. Nora caught her, but it was too late. One of the infected dropped behind them, snarling. Jensen turned and fired, rounds ripping through its chest, but another landed right on top of him. Jensen! Eddie screamed. Go! Jensen roared, jamming a grenade into the thing's mouth and pushing it back. I'll hold them. They hesitated, but Reese pulled Eddie forward. We don't stop. That's what he wants. Honor it. Behind them, an explosion tore through the tunnel. Fire rolled along the ceiling, and the screams of burning creatures followed. Dust rained from above. They sprinted until their lungs screamed for air, until the tunnel gave way to a split, one path labeled South Exit, the other marked Experimental Holding. Reese stopped, panting. Which way? Sophia checked the map on a nearby wall. South Exit looks blocked by a cave-in. Only the experimental wing remains open. We just ran from one lab, now we're heading into another? Nora asked. Better than dying right here, Reese replied. Let's go. They entered the experimental holding wing, a series of glass chambers and labs. Each room housed remains of horrific attempts, zombie variants, skeletal test subjects still strapped to chairs, and entire chambers melted by acid or fire. One chamber door was blown off its hinges. Reese peered inside and found an open elevator shaft. This is it. Freight elevator. It could lead to the surface. Or straight into another hive, Sophia said. Reese gritted his teeth. We'll take that chance. Eddie hotwired the panel, and with a groan, the lift sparked to life. It descended from above slowly, grinding gears echoing in the chamber. Get ready, Reese said, raising his rifle. If anything's on that elevator, shoot first, no regrets. The lift arrived. Empty. They piled in quickly. Reese hit the top button. As the elevator rose, silence fell. No one spoke. Only when they broke through a steel door and saw a sliver of light did hope flicker again. They emerged into a warehouse surrounded by sandbags, fences, and unmanned turrets. A sign above them read, Evacuation Zone Bravo, warning, perimeter breached. Leo whined. The others stared in stunned silence. It wasn't salvation. It was the aftermath of a last stand. Sophia whispered, "If this is Bravo, what happened to Alpha?" Then the ground trembled. Reese raised his gun. "Get ready." The warehouse was a graveyard of forgotten hope. Empty bullet casings littered the floor like fallen leaves, and blood painted the concrete in erratic strokes, some dry, some disturbingly fresh. Sandbags were torn open, their contents spilling out like guts. The turrets along the catwalks above were twisted, dead, and caked in black grime. The survivors stepped out of the elevator like intruders in a tomb. Reese took point, rifle sweeping left and right. Nora stayed close, checking high ground while Sophia walked backward, guarding their rear. Eddie hovered beside Mara, who was struggling to keep up. Leo trotted just ahead, growling low, his ears pressed back. This was a military evac zone, Reese muttered, eyes scanning the walls. They were trying to extract people from here. That means there's a way out. Then where's everyone? Sophia asked, voice tight. Nora spotted the answer first. There. She pointed to the far end of the warehouse, massive steel doors, forced halfway open. Behind them, the wreckage of a convoy lay in ruin. APCs burned to their frames, trucks overturned, and a bus, stripped, shattered, and coated in claw marks, leaned against the perimeter wall like a dead animal. They never made it out, Eddie whispered. No one did. The sound returned, the one they'd heard before the elevator. A low, seismic thrum that pulsed beneath their feet. Leo backed up and whimpered. That's not footsteps, Reese said. That's movement, underground. Then came the stench. It hit like a wave, rot, chemical burn, something older and meaner than death itself. A pipe along the wall burst, spewing black mist. No, Sophia said, eyes wide. That's not fog. It was gas. The infected were coming, again. We have to move. Reese barked. Check those trucks. Anything we can drive, we take it now. Nora and Eddie sprinted to a Humvee crushed beneath debris. Useless. Reese checked the bus, but it was hollowed out. Sophia broke into the back of a smaller Jeep, its engine looked intact. This one might run. She jumped in, ripping off the panel under the wheel. Give me 30 seconds. Mara climbed in beside her, gun shaking in her hand. I'll cover you. The others formed a perimeter. From the shadows beyond the wreckage, shapes emerged. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Some were normal infected, fast, twitchy, hungry. But others. Massive, twisted, armored with bone and pulsing muscle. Some dragged sacks of flesh behind them, leaking something wet and hissing. One walked on spider-like limbs, its head bent backward, mouth split to its spine. Hold the line. Reese shouted, opening fire. Bullets ripped through the first wave. Leo lunged into battle, tearing down anything that got too close. Nora clipped 2 with headshots, but for every one that fell, 3 more surged forward. Sophia sparked the Jeep's ignition. Come on, come on. The engine coughed. Then roared to life. Gio, she screamed. The survivors turned and ran for it. Eddie dove in first, followed by Nora and Leo. Reese fired until the last second, then leapt onto the back. The Jeep peeled out, tires screeching as Sophia slammed it through the open warehouse door and into the night. But the infected didn't stop. They poured after them, a tide of rage and hunger, illuminated by flickering fires and the headlights of the Jeep. Faster. Reese yelled. I'm trying. Up ahead, the road forked. To the left, a bridge leading out over a flooded district. To the right, a tunnel, dark and partially collapsed. Which one? Sophia shouted. Bridge. Nora called. Open air is safer. They swerved left, but as they approached, the bridge groaned. Steel cables snapped. The structure tilted. No, 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 Eddie braced himself. A massive section of the bridge crumbled ahead of them, creating a gap too wide to jump. Back! We can't. But behind them, the infected closed in, screaming, claws scraping the pavement. Reese spotted a service ramp on the bridge's lower level. There, he pointed. Ramp to the subway tracks below. Take it. Sophia turned the wheel hard. The jeep bounced and slammed onto the service path, then skidded down to the old tracks that ran beneath the bridge. Water covered the rails. The headlights revealed a submerged cityscape, ghostly towers rising from the flood, and bodies floating in the shallows. We're in the old flood zones, Eddie said. These tunnels run all the way out of the city. If we can follow them. We find a way out, Reese said. Behind them, the infected stopped at the top of the bridge ramp. One creature, the spider-like one, let out a shriek so loud it made the jeep tremble. Then it turned and vanished into the dark. What's it doing? Mara asked. Planning, Nora said. That thing's not mindless. They continued forward, the jeep rolling slowly through the waterlogged tunnel. Then, in the far distance, a red light. Blinking. Rhythmic. It was the signal tower. The end of the tracks. And maybe, just maybe, a way out. To be continued in Part 8, Final. Would you like me to finish the story with Part 8, 795 words? The blinking red light grew brighter with each foot the jeep rolled forward. It cut through the darkness like a beacon, hope buried beneath concrete and water. The survivors held their breath, afraid to believe in it, afraid to speak and shatter the fragile thread that kept them going. Reese clutched the roll bar, eyes fixed ahead. That's the signal tower, he said. We're close. Sophia eased off the accelerator as the water grew deeper. The tunnel was caving in on itself, walls cracked, ceiling dripping. The old subway line had long since flooded, but the jeep pushed through the shallows like a determined beast, headlights sweeping over graffiti-covered walls and the skeletal remains of long-abandoned cars. Do you think they're still broadcasting from up ahead? Nora asked. Maybe there's a train waiting. Another route out. Or it's just another dead end, Eddie muttered. Like the last three. No, Mara said. This is different. We wouldn't have made it this far if it wasn't leading somewhere. Up ahead, the tunnel curved left, and as they rounded the bend, the station came into view. It rose out of the water like a fortress, metal scaffolding, rusted stairs, red emergency lights, and a half-submerged platform where an old monorail train sat idle, its windows dark. The blinking red light was coming from a signal post beside the train, still powered, somehow still functioning. This is it, Reese said. Sophia brought the jeep to a stop near the base of the platform's staircase. The group piled out quickly, weapons drawn. Leo sniffed the air and stayed close to Nora. Up there, Reese pointed. We checked the train. If it's functional. A sudden, sharp clang echoed behind them. The tunnel. Water splashed. Something moved. Then a scream, shrill and inhuman. They followed us, Eddie whispered, backing toward the stairs. The screech came again, closer now. Up! Reese barked. Move! They scrambled up the slick metal steps two at a time. Below, in the tunnel's shadows, shapes emerged. Dozens of infected. Some fast. Some slow. And behind them, the spider-like monster with the twisted head and four clawed limbs. They're coming! Sophia shouted as they reached the platform. Reese kicked open the train door. It creaked and moaned, but it gave way. Everyone in. Now. The survivors piled inside. The interior was mostly intact, but coated in dust. Cables ran along the walls, and at the far end, the conductor's cabin still glowed with power. This thing might still work, Nora said, rushing forward. I'll help, Eddie followed. While they worked the controls, Reese and Sophia barricaded the door with loose benches and scrap metal. Mara stood near the center of the train, eyes flicking between her friends and the approaching chaos. Leo barked once, sharp and urgent. They're almost on us. Reese yelled. Whatever you're doing, make it fast. Nora flicked switches. Nothing. Eddie tapped the console. We need to reroute the backup. Manual override is jammed. The train began to shake. Something slammed into the outer wall. Then again. The spider thing was climbing the side. Now, Eddie! Mara screamed. Eddie yanked a final lever. Sparks flew. The control panel lit up. With a high-pitched hum, the train powered on. The lights flickered to life, and the red emergency signal went green. It's working! Nora cried. Go! Reese yelled. The train lurched forward. Just as the spider creature smashed through the window. Glass exploded inward. The monster's limbs snapped toward Eddie, but Leo leapt, tearing into its face. The train picked up speed, dragging the creature halfway inside before the motion flung it back into the tunnel. It hit the concrete with a sickening crunch. The survivors held on as the train picked up speed, racing through the tunnel system. Wind whipped through the broken window, and the roar of the tracks echoed like thunder. Where does this go? Mara asked, still catching her breath. Nora pulled up a flickering map from the side panel. There's a sealed tunnel at the edge of the city. This was the emergency evacuation line, meant to transport VIPs and military personnel. If it's intact. Then we're headed out, Reese said, voice calm. Finally. The train pushed forward for miles, through empty stations, past flooded railways and broken infrastructure. Hours passed. No sign of infected. No more screaming. Just the sound of the engine and the faint drip of distant water. Eventually, the tunnel widened, and sunlight bled in from a fractured ceiling. They emerged into the open. The train crawled to a halt in a valley beyond the city limits, green hills, broken fences, distant mountains untouched by the plague. Silence. Peace. Mara stepped out first, letting the sun hit her face. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. We made it, she whispered. Reese walked beside her. Yeah. But this isn't the end. Nora nodded. It's a beginning. They turned to look at the train, scarred, battered, but still standing. Behind it, the city loomed in the far distance, cloaked in smoke and death. The last train had taken them out. But now they had to decide what came next. Survive. Rebuild. Resist. And maybe, take the world back. The end. Would you like a cinematic thumbnail prompt for this final part?